What's up, ladies and gentlemen? My name's Kyle, aka Clean, and last tutorial we talked about proofing the client. Check the link below, I'll put that in my YouTube vid, and you can see how we got to this point. Now, my client got back to me and they said, you know what, we like what you've done, but we want this on a dark brown shirt. So at this point, I would reproof them. So let's close this out. Let's open up our, let's close this out. Let's open up our vectored file and go to where we saved it. Now, we saved it as a mock-up. And so we'll open that up. And there's some missing fonts, but I know that the missing fonts aren't in the design. The design doesn't have anything. So now that they want this on a dark brown shirt, we're going to have to change a few things. First off, it's a dark garment, so we're going to have to put a underbase under it. So to do that, I would select this box here, and I hold down my Alt and my Shift key, and I make a duplicate of that box. Now I'm going to call this my underbase. And our underbase is generally white in color. Alright. Line that up there. And center this whole part onto the page. Center that up. Alright, and so we also have to change this shirt color. So let's find the dark brown shirt color that they asked for. Let's say it's a dark brown here. So let's go ahead and save that to my desktop. And open that up in Illustrator. I think it was 60? No. It was the 47. Okay, so we open up the dark brown and we send that to the back by hitting Control Shift left bracket and then hitting Control. That sent it all the way to the back, but it's behind our background, so we want it on top of that there. And we kind of line it up like it's supposed to be. That's looking pretty good. And so at this point, I would call mockup v2, and I would do a save as. And we want to send it to the client, so we're going to save it as a PDF and do mockup v2. Now in this one, I'm going to preserve the Illustrator capabilities. And the reason I'm going to do that is because we're starting to get into different layers. Now again, if your file size is too big, you can always take that off. In fact, let's take that off, hit OK, which means this is the file we send to the client, but we're also going to have to save an Illustrator file in case we need to go back and edit this. So mockup v2, save. Okay, so let's take a look at our mockup here, v2. And we send this out to the client, and the client says, let's roll with it. They like it. You've quoted them a price, everything's set to go. So now you need to make film color separations. So how do we do that? Let's go into our Illustrator file. And I always save a template to create films, kind of as a time saver. And so we'll open up a new from template, and I have my film template there. I'll hit new. Now, a couple things about this film template. The first one is that the artboard is set up to the width of my film printer. Now, sometimes you want that, sometimes you don't. If you, the reason why you wouldn't want that is if it's a small design, if you're using RIP software like Accuracy, for example, you can you can conserve film by putting each spot color side by side, and that will be determined on the width of the registration marks and the width of the design. But in this case, our design is 12 inches wide because that's what we proofed to the client. So I always like to take my design right off of my proof. That way I'm seeing the same thing the client saw. And we'll paste that in. Now we notice here that this is off-centered. It is not... Oh, and by the way, to paste that in, you hit Control or Command V. You could also do Edit, Paste. So we pasted that in. It's off-center. Let's center it. Sometimes, if you're using an older version of Illustrator, what will happen is your origins here won't be lined up. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll hit Control R, this brings up my rulers, and I'll double click right in here. And what that would do is kind of reset your origins so that it 0 by 0 intersects right at the top left. Newer versions of Illustrator, you don't have to worry about that, but that's always good when you're about to manipulate these numbers to make sure that you're, centered here. So let's go ahead and center this. And I know that my artboard has a width of 16.6 and 13.14. So to center this design, we're going to have to divide those numbers by 2. So, let's see, my X value will be, X value 8.3, that's centered there. And then, what was it, 13.14, so it'd be 6.57. And so that centered it. Now, another quick way of centering it, if you don't want to do math, is if you notice here, I have a shirt color here. And what you can do is you can unlock your shirt color. And you can select these both and then just click on your artboard and center it this way. But you'll notice it's the same values as what I did. It's just another way of doing the same thing. So I'm going to hide that shirt color and I'm going to lock it down. Again, that shirt color was put into my template and it is adjustable if we need it to be. So like I could go in and make it whatever color I wanted. But for now, we're going to hide it and lock it. Now, we did tell our client that our design was 12 inches wide. So making sure that this little chain link here is selected, we're going to make it 12 inches wide. Also, something to note here is let's undo that by hitting Control or Command Z. Had I had that at the top here, and I hit 12 inches wide, it's going to center it on that. So this will show you your anchor point. Now, we want our anchor point here at the center because we already centered it. And do 12 inches wide. And notice it changed our height as well. That's good. It's 11.4. Now you can double check that by going here, and we are good. So let's get started with doing color separations. Now, one thing you'll notice is how my artboard's set up. A lot of designs that we do are 12 inches wide. So I know that these are good places to put my registration marks. A word about registration marks is you want them to show on all your color plates. How do we do that? Well, the way we do that is we make sure that we have our registration marks selected, and notice that they are strokes. And that our registration swatch here is highlighted, and that will tell the computer to, when it outputs each spot color, to make sure that that swatch is on every plate. That's a good thing. Now I have a header here, and that header is also registration. And what I like to do is put the name of the design, the shirt, and the location. So, for example, we called this design Chimp, and we know it's going on an adult t-shirt, so I abbreviate ATS, and we know it's going on the front. So that will let your screen printer know, or your screen operator know, that where this design is going and on what style. Sometimes people will want to do two different sizes, so sometimes they'll do a 12-inch version and a 10-inch version, one for adult, one for youth. So you want to kind of put that on your films so that there's no confusion when they burn the screens. Another thing I do is I make sure that I have a screen order down here. We, on the last tutorial, had done our callouts, and we had proofed our callouts as well. So we can, at that point, put on our films what those callouts are. So first we're going to do an underbase, and on our underbase here, let me just drag it like this. So we'll call this underbase, and then we're going to do a dark brown, and what did we call that? 4625. And then we're going to do a brown 470. And what I neglected to put here is a C to make sure that they use solid coated inks or plastisol inks. So let's put that in there. And for our fourth color, we're going to do this tan. And now our fifth color was the black. And then our sixth color was going to be the white. Now, one thing to note here is that if we go to our color separation, well, first off, let me talk about our layers here. Because we're doing a progression of bringing this in from our proof, and we had already named our proof, it's actually, I misspelled something here. This is color sebs. You'll notice that all our layers are named. That's a good thing, because when we get later on down the line, we'll be turning these things on and off, especially to create our base. If we go to our color separations preview here, and we turn off and on the CMYK, we'll notice that our callout values drop off. That's because we haven't done a step yet. But for the most part, if we turn off the black, that's looking good. Turn off dark brown, the brown, that's all looking good. Tan, white. Now, we're not seeing anything happen under the white. So, there is white there. I know there's white there, but we're not seeing it. So let's make sure that we can see it. And the way we do that is by making sure that all our whites are selected. Select the same fill color, and we just double click on here and we make it some odd color. Now that's just going to show up on our computer screens. It's not going to affect our film. So when we go back here, now when we turn the white on and off, we see a difference. And again, that's not going to affect our films. So let's go back to our swatches, our layers preview. And we want to fix that CMYK where our colors dropped out. We actually want to assign something there. And the way we do that is I use my direct selection tool, the white one there. And I highlight these and I just choose. Now if you notice here, we actually don't have an underbase in our swatches. So let's create one. We'll call it spot color. Call it underbase. Whoops, didn't mean to hit enter there. So go back to this, call it underbase, and we'll give it a color. Now, again, this is only affecting, what color we make it only affects it on our computer screen. So we'll hit OK. I made it a bright yellow. Now let's look at it. That bright yellow is bright yellow there. And so let's do that for this one as well. Dark brown, brown, tan, black, and white, which we made that bright yellow. Now if we go into our separations preview and we turn on and off our CMYK, we notice that nothing changes. And in fact, this is a good way to proof your work. Sometimes what will happen is that you'll have two different blacks in your design and you won't notice it until you get to this point. So at this point you could, see if there was a black that's not assigned. Another thing is if we go here and let's look at each individual color separation, we'll see that on the black plate, the black is showing, brown on the brown, dark brown on the dark brown. So, you can see before you actually spend money and print films, because yes, films cost money. You can kind of see what it's going to print out like. It's very handy, very nifty feature. I think it was added in CS4. Alright, so we're pretty much ready to print this. Everything's been approved, everything's good here. And there is one thing we're missing, and that is an underbase. I'm just now realizing we don't have an underbase. Again, let's just have the underbase showing. We have the call out for the underbase, but there's no actual underbase here. So let's show everything again. Let's build that underbase. Now there's several different thoughts on how to build an underbase. I'm going to walk you through a couple different ways of doing so. The first way, and this is the way that I have traditionally done it, is that I'll turn off everything here except for the design, and then I'll select the design and I'll copy it by hitting Command or Control C, and then I'll paste it behind by hitting Command or Control B. You'll see we have two layers here. Now I'll turn off the top one because that's the design, and I'll name this underbase so that we know which one we're working on. So for an underbase, there's a couple things to consider. The first one being we don't want the underbase to come right up to the edge here. Another is we don't want and the reason why we don't want it to come up right to the edge is that we'll have a hard time. Let's make this that color. You see how that's coming right up to the edge? You'll have a hard time lining it up just perfectly. And so what will happen is on certain edges that white underbase will peek through. So we want to choke what is known as choking in the industry, and we'll choke that underbase. Another thing to consider here is that, and I'm going to undo that. I made that underbase yellow. I don't want to do that just yet. So another thing to consider here is that we don't want a black plate underneath, or we don't want an underbase underneath our black plate. And so what we could do at this point is just delete the black plate. Now in this image I have it all separated and ready to go, but what you could do to get all your black is to select same fill color. Remember, when we did this proof, we did expand it. When we did this proof, we did expand it and flatten it, or trim it and then merge it. So that's another reason why you want to take your design from your proof, is because you've already done that work. And you won't have to do it again. And unless you manipulate the design, the less things can go wrong. So these are all flat objects. Now if they weren't flat objects, I'll show you how to flatten it again, because I did it in the last tutorial. So we'll take our original, which is that file here. That was our original. If we look at our original file, we'll make it 12 inches, and we'll copy it, and we'll paste it in here, and we'll line it up to this other one. So that is perfectly centered. And we'll call this original. Yes, we did make a color change. That was on purpose. Okay, so I'm going to show you what it looks like if it's not flattened. So this original here, you notice how we have lines going under, objects underneath objects. Those are actually what they call overprints. Also, we have some strokes in the design. If we go over here, notice we have a brown stroke. So to flatten it and get rid of the overprints, it's a four-step process. We go to Object, Expand, and hit OK. And then we go to Trim, and then we go to Merge. And that's it. Boom. It's all done. There is one other step that this design doesn't need, and that is to get rid of the transparency fills. Now obviously we don't have any of this on this design, but to show you what that is, let's go ahead and hide this design, and I'll go ahead and do Kleanfx, and we'll make this real big, and I'm just showing you now what a transparency fill is. So we'll create outlines, and we'll make this a spot color, and I'll show you, we'll go through the same 3 steps, and then I'll show you the 4th. So Object, Expand, and then we Trim, and then we Merge. Alright, so what is a transparency fill? If we go into our layers over here, this bottom path is a weird path. If I select it, you notice it's really nothing. it is a empty fill and an empty stroke. Yeah, it shows up after the Pathfinder does its thing. Now, we could keep it in there, but when we go to make our base, it's going to look a little weird. Another thing is if I go here and I try to make this all yellow, oops. If I go to make this all yellow, notice that A got filled in. So a lot of times after using the Pathfinder, you'll want to delete that. So you could try to find them all in your groups, but that's really hard to do. So the easy way to find all those transparency fills is, say you have your fill as a color. If you just go down here to none and select none, notice nothing selected here. Now if I go to select same fill color, now it's finding all the fill colors that are none, which happens to be just that one. So hit delete on your keyboard and you get rid of it. Now, we aren't printing Kleanfx. We are printing something else. We are printing this design. Now, remember I brought in my original here. So let's rename it original. And I flattened it. Okay. So that was just to show you what the flattened is. And so the fourth step here, after we flatten everything, get rid of the things, is to select the transparency fills, select same fill color. And we don't have anything here, so we're all good to go. Now I'm going to delete this original because that's not the file we're working with. We're working with the one that I pulled off of my mock-up. Remember, I pulled it from here. And so we have that here, and now we're building the base, and I'm showing you how to build this base. So let's turn off the original. Let's call this Underbase. So we're making the Underbase here. Now, remember, we did, again, flatten it, got rid of all the transparency fills, got rid of the overprints, did all that. So we're good to go. We can, we know that this black here is not going, if we delete it, there's not going to be tan underneath it. That's good. We don't want an underbase underneath our black, so that's why we want to delete that black. So at that point, what I do is I select my underbase here, and I make it all one solid color. So this would be a viable underbase, but again, if we zoom in, notice that the design is right on top. We haven't choked it yet. So let's go ahead and choke it. The way we choke it here is we go to our stroke color, and we assign it something that's not going to show up when we print our films, which is a white. Now that's not going to show up when we print our films. And the stroke size that we use is 1 point. And if we go into our stroke box, which may or may not show up on your workspace, you can find it here under Window, Stroke, and it will come out like right in here, and you can just, go ahead and put it wherever you want. The reason why we opened up this panel is that we want to make sure that it's aligned to center. And what that means is that if we zoom in here and we hide this, notice that my object is still going to here, but it's actually over this. So if we were, and the best way to explain this is, I'm going to make it an actual color. Let's make it this green here. You see how it overhangs both sides of the object. So really we're only choking this by half a point, which in reality is really tiny. Sometimes you want to choke it more, other times you want to choke it less. I don't think, though, you'll be able to hold a choke that you choke less. So reality, you might just only want to choke it more. If you're using 380 screens at 85 LPI, it's possible that you could go a half a point, but really it's going to make your press operator spend more time on press, and press time is very valuable. Depends on the shop, but a lot of times you want to make the press operator's life as easy as possible. So our underbase, we could consider it done, but there is a trap with this underbase. And what do I mean by there's a trap on this underbase? If we look over here and we turn on the design, where these two colors meet, there's a blank area. Now, a lot of press operators like to see traps. Having a trap is not a bad thing. However, and to get into the details of what a trap does, basically, when basically it's going to be, first off, it's going to be hidden because we're printing color on top of this base. But it allows for the edges of the design to kind of soak into the shirt and makes it so that it's slightly different. So you kind of get a tad bit of synthetic anti-aliasing in your design, which softens the edges and also allows for any kind of ink buildup around the edge to kind of get absorbed. Remember, we're flashing this design, and so that will be a solid color on top of the shirt. It will be real thick. Another thing to consider is that, notice this dark brown. This is a dark brown on a dark brown shirt. We may or may not need an underbase underneath that. In fact, I'd really kind of say that we wouldn't need an underbase underneath that. So we could go in and delete the dark brown and just have no underbase underneath that and have that be our underbase, or that be our underbase. Another thing that we can do is just kind of make the underbase more diffuse. So instead of having just a solid ink layer down that has been dried and flashed, what you could do is go into your transparencies here, or you could go into your colors here. If you select your fill color here, you could make this a little bit more diffuse. Either one works. There are differences between these two percentages. This one assumes that you have a white matte underneath it. So for example, if I take a square and let's make it brown and let's put it behind this, and let's make this dark brown. Well, actually we don't want it dark brown. Let's make it green. And this is just to show you the differences between opacity and color here. Okay, I figured it out. This isn't spot, so let's go ahead and move this color over here and make it spot. Okay, now you'll notice that all changed to a percentage. Now what I want to do is show you the difference here between these two. Remember what I said by it assumes there's a white mat underneath it. So let's go ahead and take this top layer here, this dark brown, and oops, not make it dark brown. We want to change the transparency here. So let's make it 20%. You notice how it just did 20% of that yellow now is showing on that green. So let's make it 50%. See how that color changes between the two here. Now, let's bump it back up to 100% opacity and just change this color here to 20%. You notice how we're still not seeing that green underneath. Now let's change it to 50%. That green is still hidden. So in this case, we're not doing an overprint. We are doing an overprint, but we're not doing a green background there. So either one will work. I tend to like to have it not in the color, so I tend to keep my color at 100% and then just change this opacity. But according to the RIP software, it won't make too much of a difference. Okay, so let's kind of review what we did here. Why 50%? Oh, that's a good question. It's a dark brown, so we could theoretically go all the way down to, say, even a 15%. That would make these dots really diffuse. And when I say dots and diffuse, I can kind of show you what that means. I don't have RIP software connected to this computer, but I do have a way of showing you this. So let's go ahead and make this black. And this again is just to show you the purpose of this. And let's make this dark brown. Let's make it 50%. Okay. And I want to show you what halftones are and what we just did and how the RIP software will determine this. So I'm going to turn off my other layers. And whoops. Turn off, no, I won't turn off anything. This looks good. So let's do a file save as. And I'm going to do a chimp halftone example. I'm going to save this as an AI file and hit OK. Now I want to make sure that this black is 100% K value, which it is. So we're good there. All right. So I saved it to my desktop. So let's go into Photoshop. And we're going to open up this example that I just saved to my desktop in Photoshop, because I'm going to mimic what a halftone value is. Example, open, and we want a resolution at 300. RGB is okay, and suppress, yeah, we're good. Okay, so now I just opened this up in Illustrator. This is not going to show up right, so we wanted a solid black. So let's go back to RBG, and again, I'm not adjusting anything here. This is just to show you the example. So we saved it as the halftone example. Now we're going to open up Photoshop and we're going to find that Illustrator file. RBG, good. Now this is a black. This is a deep black. As black as we can get it in RBG. So to mimic a halftone, and to show you what a halftone is here, I'm going to convert this to grayscale, discard all the colors here, and then I'm going to convert it to a bitmap. Keep it at its resolution. Make sure we're on halftone screen. Do 55 lines per inch. If we were using, say, 380 screens, which you're probably not, but let's just say you were, you'd want this at 85 lines per inch. But for the purpose of this example, we're going to use 55. Angle here doesn't matter too much. We'll do round dots. And I'm just showing you what I meant here. Now, if we notice here, this solid black here is pretty much going to be solid. This will print solid. These tiny little dots at 300 DPI or lines per inch, they're not going to show up on your screen. They're not going to hold. The dot gain is actually going to fill those in. But if we zoom in to where it was 50%, it looks, as you zoom out, it looks gray. But in reality, when you zoom in real close, if we look at it, this is all going to be a solid black. And if we look over here, it's only half the area is going to be filled in with black. The other half is going to be the shirt color or the underbase. So, if you see here, it may look gray, but it's really solid colors. And only 50% of that artboard is filled in with black, which as you zoom out makes it look gray. And that's what our RIP software is doing when we put in a transparency. So if we go back to here, now we're in Illustrator and we zoom in, this is actually black here. Let's select it, and if we go and we look here, I think I can still do my eyedropper. And if we go to info, yeah, it's 100% black. It's just the opacity has been dropped down on this dark on this part where that looks gray. So that's what the RIP software does. Again, if we zoom out, that's 50%. And then we go to Illustrator, that's 50%, and that's how it looks in Illustrator. This is how it will look like on your films. Alright, so that's one way to make a base. And you could just say, hey, I'm done, and print this. Now, I'll explain the print process in another tutorial, but I'm going to show you another way of doing a base real quick that a lot of people don't know how to do. It's not like it's totally difficult or anything like that, but I'll just show you real quick another way of doing an underbase. So let's copy this design by hitting Command Control Z and paste it in behind by hitting Command or Control B. Let's hide the design on top of it. Now, what we're going to do is take this black and set it up on top there. Actually, scratch that. What we're going to do is duplicate this black. Whoops, just the black. So we want to duplicate just the black, hitting Command and Control C and Command and Control F. It puts that black right on top, and we're going to throw it up on the top there. And what we're going to do, this other method of creating a underbase, is doing it without a trap and without using a stroke. What? Huh? How do you do it? Why would you want to do that? Well, some screen printers don't like traps. It's really not a big deal to do it either way, but I'm just showing you another method of doing this. So let's assign this all white, and let's hide that so we can see that our whole design here is white. We only have the eye on this underbase. Let's call it underbase here, and we're going to do the same thing we did before as expand, trim, merge. You may be saying, but we don't want to put an underbase underneath that black. Well, we don't. but we're not done yet either. So we then take this design and make sure that we have no fill colors. Same fill colors, and any transparency fill color is not in this design because nothing's selected. And now we are going to hit Command Control C and Command and Control F and paste that. So we just duplicated our base. And we're going to take this base and we're going to hit that little button. And what that did was it made our fill into a stroke. It just transposed those two. So now our fill is transparent and our stroke is that solid yellow that we are naming Underbase. So you say, but we don't want transparency fills, and we don't. So let's do expand. And that just expanded our stroke. Now, again, we could double check, make sure there's no transparency fills. Let's do that real quick. I know there's not, but let's just check. Yep, there's not. Now we have these two layers. This is the copy of the underbase, and this is the underbase. This copy of the underbase is just the outlines here. The stroke that we created. Again, that stroke, if I hit Command or Control Z, all the way back to it's a stroke again. We're doing it at 1 point, which is about the least amount you can choke it without it ever showing ever. So let's expand this again. I just wanted to, go back to show you that this stroke was 1 point. So back again to where we were. Now let's unhide this. Let's select both of these. Hold down Alt and do minus front while Alt is being held down. And then click expand. And now what that did was that choked the outer edges. But notice we don't have, this is all one big object. We don't have any traps. And that's good. We don't want any traps on here. So let's verify now that this is actually choked. So let's pull in real close and hide and show our artwork. And yes, in fact, this is choked. So that's good. And now, since we don't want the black underneath our base, we pulled the black out. Let's select these two and do the same thing. Hold down Alt, click on minus front, and then click expand. And now let's call this Underbase with no trap. So, do you need to create an underbase that way? No, you don't. It's up to your screen printer whether or not they want a trap. Some say they don't even care, so the other way is probably easier. Do it the other way. But let's look here. Notice that under our black, it's not being choked. And that's a good thing. We wanted that effect. That's because we don't want a trap there by the black. And then if we look over here, there's no choking. I mean, there is choking, excuse me, underneath that there. So don't fret, because this is all going to be printed. So your white underbase will never show up on that black. That black will be printed right on top. And again, it's just a preference of the screen printer. If they like it trapped or if they don't like it trapped, it changes the design just minutely. So minutely that if you're not an educated screen printer, you probably won't tell the difference. But it is another way of doing an underbase, and I thought I might share with you that way. So let's review what we have here. We'll only want to print one underbase. Let's pretend like we're printing the underbase with the trap. So that's the one with the trap. Oh, I forgot to do my halftones on this. Whoops. Well, let's create halftones. So I'll go through that process in real time. Alright, so to show you how to make an underbase no trap with a halftone in real time, we're going to go ahead and make a copy of this artwork and paste it behind, turn off the front copy, open up these layers, select the black, copy in front. Yes, it's a lot of steps. We'll make this dark brown, this yellow, or make it at 50%. Hit OK. Select all these colors. Make them all yellow here. Take this dark brown, put it on top there. Hide these eyes, hide this dark brown. Select this color. It's a lot here. Hit I wanted to make a copy of that. So we'll put that up on top there. And then what we'll do is we will select all these colors. Object, expand, trim, that, hide that, copy, in front, make it a stroke, make sure it's at 1, object, expand, hit OK. Select this layer, hit Alt, do this, and then put this up here with my color at 50%, my color at 50%, and then take my black and my compound path and minus front. Oops, gotta turn on the eyeballs there. Alt, expand, and make sure that that's on top, and make this 50%. Let's make it even 20%. And then we'll notice here that we have no trap, and it is choked. Let's name this underbase with, or no trap with halftone. Alright, now those are a lot of steps that you don't really need to worry about, but it just proves to you that you can do the base either way. With the trap, turn on this one, and no trap. Looking good, nothing under the base, and let's turn on this eyeball. We zoom in real close here. It's still being choked. This is a good thing. That's how we wanted it. Looking good. So at this point, turn everything back on. Go to your separations preview. And how do we want to print this? I'm gonna call this. We'll print out the traditional way. So one thing we got to do here. Let's look at our separations color preview. If we turn off the CMYK, we notice our black is not selected there. So we lost our black. So let's reassign our black in our design. I don't know how that got lost. Maybe when I was yeah, that's right. I was showing you how to what a halftone was. So let's move this all the way up. All right. So we turned our black back to separations preview. Now that's a good lesson there, folks. Make sure before you hit print, you always go to your separations preview so you can see. So we'll turn off our CMYK. Notice nothing changed there. It's a good thing. And we'll just go layer by layer and make sure that everything looks good. Our black looks good. Brown looks good. Let's deselect. So brown looks good. Dark brown looks good. Our tan looks good. Our yellow we're not seeing. Why aren't we seeing our yellow? Well, let me explain. There is a reason why we're not seeing our yellow. That's what they call overprints. Remember before I was explaining overprints, and I said I'd explain a little later why we would want overprints. Here's why. So if we go to our layers and we select our design here, and then we select our, actually, let me just show you how it is right now. So we already saw, we know what to expect. Our, if we output this right now, host base positive, and we go here, requires for flattening, yeah, okay, I'll explain that later too. If we print this, I'm just printing it as a PDF to my desktop. We notice that here's our white, our underbase is not showing. It's not showing. We were expecting that though. So how do we get it to show? How we get it to show is actually kind of easy to do. And all we do is we select what layers we want and we go into our attributes panel. Now if you don't have an attributes panel showing, you can go to Window, Attributes, or hit Control F11. It will pop it out to your desktop. I happen to nest mine right here, and we click this little box, overprint fill. Now notice we should have this whole thing selected, and so now this is going to print and overprint. So let's do a save as, and we're not saving it as an example at this point. We're going to save it as chimp final output and save it here. Hit OK. So now if we go into our color separations preview, yeah, it makes it look all funky. That's okay though. Let's turn off these layers. That's our black. That's good. Let's deselect this. That is our brown. That's our dark brown. That's our tan. That's our white. And that's our underbase. So we're looking good. Turn off the overprints preview. File, save, yeah. Okay, so it's saved, final output. We're looking good. Everything's saved here. One thing to note is that I have both layers, both bases showing. And I really don't want both bases showing when I go to hit print. So I would turn one off or I delete one, whatever you want to do. But this will print good. To prove it, just real quick, if I go into print and I go into my output separations, we're good there. There is a process black in here. Why is there a process black? A pesky process black. Where is it coming from? Alright, so I just spent a little time figuring out why there was a process black in my design. Because when I went to my print dialog, and I went to my output, when I looked at it, there was a printer there at that process black. There shouldn't have been. So I spent a little time, figured out that these little blank spaces in between here weren't selected when I did my color callouts, and so they were assigned a process black, which is unfortunate. I can mimic it, so if I put this as a process black, and then I go to my dialog here, and I go to my output, boom, there it is, it's back in my design. So let's hit cancel, and instead of just selecting, that, we have to select all those blank spaces too. And click dark brown. Now if we go to File, Print, we go to Output, boom, process black is gone. So back to where I was. Let's go ahead and print this and just show you what our end result is. Final output. So here we have our black plate, our brown plate, our dark brown, tan, underbase, and white. Now this, one thing to note, that our monkey here is not, oops, let's go back to our thing here. Sorry, our PDF, I should say, is not RIP software, so it's not going to do halftones. It outputted as gray. If you put this through a RIP, these would be solid black dots, but only covering 50% of the area. So that's something to know. If you're trying to bypass RIP software, it's not an easy thing to do, especially if you want halftones. You have to go into Illustrator and create, Photoshop, and create them like I did here. But it's, and you would have to do that for each color. So anyway, this tutorial's done. If you have any questions, please comment, like, or subscribe. Thank you.